My name is Karen. I'm clearly an alcoholic. I will preface by saying that I have really bad ADHD, so if I lose my train of thought, just bear with me. um, also, Matt, I'm so proud of you. Oh my gosh. I remember when he went into detox and he wasn't sure about AA, and look at you now. And look at us now. Okay. So my sobriety date is June 8th of 2020. I have two home groups. I do Marina Centers on Zoom, their late night meeting, and I have a women's meeting that I attend at Visions, which is located in Thousand Oaks, California. So I guess we'll start from the top. I guess in my head, I always feel like I've always been an alcoholic. And also drugs are also a part of my story. But I've definitely known that I've always been like an addict and an alcoholic, even before I picked up a drink or drug. It's just like the way that like I think and react to the world is very in line with that. When I was in the third grade, I started having severe headaches and we didn't know why. So my parents took me to a pediatrician who then referred to me to a psychologist, where I was diagnosed with depression at the age of 8. My memory is a little fuzzy about the exact timeline, but around that same time, my mom told me that she was an alcoholic. I didn't know what an alcoholic was or what that really even meant, to be honest. I was a little bit too young. And I feel like at that point when she had told me like things hadn't gotten, they hadn't progressed like they had in the future. When I was in the 5th grade, I remember like, if you guys remember those DARE classes where like the cops come to your class and like educate you about drugs and alcohol. So they had like an exercise where they were like, oh, what does a crack addict look like? Like a fucking 10-year-old knows what a crack addict looks like, but they're asking like these questions and they're like, well, what does an alcoholic look like? And everyone was saying like, oh, they're sloppy, like they slur their words, they fall down. And I was the only person in a class of 30 to 40 kids that said that they looked like normal people. And that's because I lived with one. Going into junior high was when things really started to ramp up with my mom's addiction. She had also been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So that's just like a whole lot of fun, My first experience with AA was actually when I was about 12 years old. I went to Alateen, which is like the teenage version of Al-Anon. That's where I was first exposed to the 12 steps. Not that it really meant anything. It was just something we read at the beginning of every meeting. Moving on into high school, like I kind of had separated from like my friend group that I had growing up. We all kind of went different directions, and I wasn't like very popular or like really well liked. I actually got bullied a lot, physically and mentally. So in high school, I was trying to find new friends. I started smoking weed, started drinking, and about a year later, I started going to raves. Actually, I was probably like 15 years old, which, fun fact, that's kind of indirectly how I know Maddie. So since I felt so alone in my regular life, like I found this group of people who accepted me, that I saw every week, that even till this day, I still have friendships from people that I met in those times and have seen me in the good and the bad. Around this time too, I started doing cocaine. I would steal money from my parents, and like I would buy these little 20 bags from like this like cook at Maria's in Agora. And I was ballsy as fuck as a teenager. I would do it at school, and I would go as far as to go to the health office and use the bathroom there because it was the only bathroom in the entire school that had a lock on it, which happened to be right next to the principal's office. Still, I never got caught. I did end up quitting though, and I did actually have my first kind of real dose of like treatment, if you will. I got caught doing coke by my parents, and I went to a outpatient program called Action, located in Simi Valley, which they do mostly NA. I don't really count my time or experience in that program because the entire time I was going to raves and I was doing acid and mushrooms and ketamine like all the time. I didn't really even fully graduate. I think my parents just like stopped paying for it. They thought that I was good enough, I guess. But you know, later in life, I realized how much of a toll that took on my family, like on my dad specifically. He would, you know, take time off work just to drive me to this program, and he ended up getting let go of his job because of how much time he was taking off between me and my mom. At this point too, my mom started getting really manic when she was drinking, to the point where she would be on a gurney in the hospital or gurney carried away to the hospital. We stopped referring them as like hospital trips and started calling them field trips because it was just like, you know, a pretty regular thing. After high school, I graduated early and I had moved away. I'd moved to my mom's in Pasadena, and what was it called? Oh yeah. So about a month after I turned 18, I got my first DUI. I was driving I was driving from a drum and bass party, a Benny Page show specifically, where my friends were all working the bar and kept giving me beer. And I dropped my friend off in Santa Monica, and I wanted to go to a booty call. So I drove all the way to Thousand Oaks, and I got pulled over on the 23. My drunk tank experience, like, honestly, is just pretty funny. I had some woman in there who had like 5 DUIs telling me to like go to like Nevada and claim residency and get my license there so I can still have a license after I'm convicted, which I don't think that's how that works. And then on top of that, the woman in the cell next to us got pepper sprayed, and being in an enclosed space, it creeped into our cell. So that was a lot of fun. During that period, I did like a 3-month DUI program. I was still driving on a suspended license. I actually got caught driving on a suspended license, but my date was like the month before I could get my license back. So my public defender told me to plead not guilty, go get your license, come back. I did exactly that. I avoided jail time. I got really lucky. And that time was probably close to when I was turning 21. So I was living in Pasadena, so Hollywood was just like a hop, skip, and a jump away. I was like a regular at Cabo Cantina in Hollywood, knew all the bartenders, you know, front guys. I was there like 3-4 days a week. And then I want to say when I was about 22, I got my second DUI. Still, I mean, honestly, my first 2 DUIs really didn't affect me that much. And also in this time, at this time I was 22. I had been clean from doing coke for 8 years, and I started seeing a guy, and it was very emotionally abusive, and he actually like forced me to do it. And after that, it kind of was a regular thing, not to the degree that it got to, but that's when it all kind of started perpetuating even more. And when I was 23, about to be 24, I moved to San Diego, where I was actually doing pretty well for a while. I mean, at least I thought I was doing well. Still doing coke, still drinking, you know, had a lot of like, it was exploited a lot by a lot of people. But, you know, if there's anything that like I've learned in like the 4th step too, is that when we write our resentments, like we realize that these people are just as sick as we are, you know, and not to excuse the behavior, but you know, no one's perfect. The fourth step has allowed me to have more grace for myself and more compassion for other people. So we're in San Diego. I get this killer job working in a physical therapy office, which is like my destined career. I'm working part-time as a personal trainer in Carmel Valley, which is like a really nice neighborhood, lots of money. Around this time though, I had gotten my third DUI. And this was really when like shit hit the fan for me. I for sure shouldn't have been driving, but I knew that I was targeted because I was pulled over going 70 miles an hour on the freeway, not swerving. But it was rolling into Christmas, so I'm pretty sure that they looked at my license plate. But to be honest, I ain't mad about it because I'd rather be pulled over than crash my car or hurt somebody else. So in that sense, I'm really lucky. And you know, you would think that this would have been the wake up call I needed, but sneak peek, it's really not. I go back to San Diego. I'm not fighting the case, but I'm trying to, I knew I was going to have to serve jail time. I served jail time for my second in Linwood, but it was quick check in, get medically processed, check out. It was nothing. It was no big deal. My third though, I knew I was going to have to serve jail time. I was in school. I didn't want to have to, cut out of the semester to like start up this jail time. So they stuck a low jack on me, an alcohol monitor, if you will, that tests alcohol through your bloodstream. And I did not drink this entire time that I had this thing on. However, I went out to Pacific Beach one night with a guy who had been drinking, and I had kissed him, and it registered as alcohol in my system. So that Monday, I had to report to court. I was living in San Diego, but where the low jack was located was in LA. So I had to go there regardless. Sidebar, this judge that I had for my third DUI was the same judge I had for my second DUI. She's a bitch. I still feel that to this day. I'm allowed to have resentment still, okay? We're not perfect. Progress, not perfection. Anyways, this lady, my lawyer's trying to schmooze it like, oh, like we're just looking out for you, blah, 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 blah. Like the judge was like, no. Like, we know that these devices are very reliable, And so honestly, I didn't expect to go into jail that Monday. I really didn't. And I got taken in handcuffs right then, right there, placed in a holding cell in Van Nuys, where I was then transported to Linwood. I was there for about 17 days in March of 2017. Honestly, jail for me wasn't really all that bad. They took one look at me and they're like, okay, this like white girl can go on like the lowest cell block possible. I don't know if anyone's ever been to county, but they put me in the day room, like my first day there, which is they have like cell blocks, right? Or jail cells, but in the common areas, they have bunk beds. They have like probably, I want to say like 10 of them that have 3 bunks because the jails are so overcrowded that they just try to pack people in any way they can. So yeah, jail really wasn't like that bad for me. I was sentenced to like, I don't even remember the exact time. I think it was like 100 and something days. I did 17 days, but they asked if I wanted to do house arrest for the rest of my sentence because I was not a violent offender, which I did at my mom's house. In this time, I was allowed to leave the house if I was like able to have someone sign where I was. So I would lie and say I was at AA meetings just so I could go to the gym. And then like I would have friends come over and visit me, and my friend who wasn't clean, she was actually hanging out with a lot of people in recovery, and we would joke and say she's my sponsor, and she would sign off on all of my shit. Finish house arrest, go back to San Diego, looking for a job. I applied for a restaurant job, lied about my experience. I had never worked in a restaurant ever. I got asked to work at a Hilton in San Diego, where my first day on the job, they made me a bartender, which was just like, just genius idea. In this time, I wasn't drinking on the job at first, but after a while, I would, there was a restaurant that was upstairs. I was friends with the bartenders. I would go up there on my lunch. I would kick back a couple drinks, go back to work. But one day, I don't know what it was, because I really hadn't even drinking that much. I also had a prescription for Klonopin because I was diagnosed with panic disorder. I wouldn't say misdiagnosed, and I will tie into that a little bit later. But also, fun fact, I don't know if anyone here has ever been on benzos. They last in your system, like they have a half-life, but even if you drink the next day, you could still have that effect of if you were to drink and take it. So I think that's what happened. Someone complained that I was drunk on the job. I just left. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I just peaced out. I bartended at another job where this is where like the Coke was really ramping up, and I was doing a lot of Coke because I was drinking a lot, and I would do it to balance it out. I would drink too much, do Coke, come down, drink more, sleep. But now we're at the point where I'm working at a resort on Harbor Island in San Diego, and I'm literally getting like balls of Coke delivered to my work every single day, and I'm doing it in the bathroom. I mean, it's probably a miracle I never got a nosebleed at work, but I was let go of that job. My manager actually like lied and got me fired, but I think that she probably suspected something. Around this time, I kind of went through an argument, I guess you could say, with like a friend group. Burned a lot of bridges. Both my fault, in some instances not my fault. And I had a roommate who lived with me at the time too, who I actually used to do Coke with in high school. And we would enable each other. And got to the point where I actually expressed my concern of my Coke use to a friend of mine, and I asked her to come live with me. And my roommate wasn't down for it after I had let her boyfriend live with us for free. Basically, I'm just going to save all the little details. Basically, that night, she came home, barred out, and tried to stab me at 2:00 in the morning. I had also not slept because I had bartended a Cinco de Mayo party where I had rolled the night before. So I'm fucking like partially delusional, I guess, waiting outside at 2:00 in the morning for the cops to come. And where I lived, there were cops there all the time. But for some reason, when I fucking called them, they didn't show for like 3 hours. After that, I wanted to get away because I lived with her. So I was like, okay, like I'll go to my hometown, Agora Hills, if anyone knows where that is. Go see my best friend that I grew up with. Her husband, I knew him in high school, and her drinking was pretty bad too. She's actually still drinking. She's starting to come around to the idea that she has a problem. So, I mean, fingers crossed, God willing. So keep in mind, I almost got stabbed the day before. I go to her house, and her husband shoves me into a wall and starts screaming at me because his wife has never been the same since they got married. Keep in mind, I'd seen her maybe 3 times in the last year. So why that's my fault, I have no idea.
Oh, 5 minutes.
Oh shit. Okay. I'm gonna ramp it up.
All right.
Anyways, that night I tried to kill myself. And I don't think I really wanted to die. But I kind of like told someone that I'd taken all these pills. I'm going to fast forward to like the good part. So let's fast forward to last year, COVID happening. My mom, the alcoholic who's bipolar, if you guys didn't know, you can actually get pneumonia from alcoholism. And my mom's gotten pneumonia many, many, many times. And her health had started deteriorating over the years. She had tried to quit drinking and had a seizure. And she tried to quit drinking again after that, had a seizure and bit her tongue. Anyways, my mom went into the hospital last year with pneumonia. And me and my sister, we just knew that this was it. It was not COVID. She got tested 3 times. But this whole thing really kind of made me reflect on my drinking. I told my dad I wanted to go to treatment, and 2 days later, my mom passed away. But I'm at peace with that. I didn't say things that I wanted to say to her, but I'm at peace with that because of that, I was able to reflect on my drinking, but it's also like why I'm still sober. It was a real God shot, in the sense that some things that happened, I had a spiritual experience before I'd even gone into treatment. I did IOP and I was in a sober living of forced recovery, which is where I also work part-time. And because my mom passed away, I was able to afford treatment. So, she may not have been like such a great mom when she was alive, but when she passed away, she did more for me. And even though like I was bearing a lot of feelings of guilt, like, do I deserve this money? Because I like avoided her for 6 months before she passed away. But around my 6 month of sobriety mark, I had a dream, and my 6 months of sobriety and my mom's birthday were the same day. I had a dream, and I shit you not, I was in my childhood home in my parents' closet, and I saw her in the doorway, and I just ran up to her and I was like hugging her and crying and saying, I'm sorry. And I could smell her perfume. It was the most insane thing I'd probably ever experienced. And ever since that dream, I've actually had a lot of closure. I'm finishing up, Matt, I promise. What my sobriety looks like today, I haven't actually finished my steps. I was with a sponsor. I knew I didn't mesh with her, and I'd honestly been juggling with the idea of whether or not to switch sponsors. I started it in a step study format, and then I tried to do it in a workshop format. But when I got to my year of sobriety a few weeks ago, one of my best friends who had 7 years clean and who was basically my sober companion, she like helped me pack for rehab and everything. I caught her smoking heroin in the hotel bathroom on my birthday, which she maintains that she didn't do it, but like I know she did. So I wasn't really at peace when I took my year because I didn't have her beside me. I wasn't done with the work. I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. Some of the promises have come true. I do have a new lease on life. I view things a lot differently and I react a lot differently. But with that, I was like, you know what? I know what I need to do. So I switched sponsors. I am now going through the work again with a new sponsor who is amazing. And I work in treatment now as of last week. I also have a day job too. So I am just got a full fucking schedule. But yeah, like if I can give any advice to some of the newcomers out there, stick with the winners. You'll know who they are. Pause and breathe. Take a moment before you react to anything. Ask for help. And additionally, helping others and being of service. Anything to get out of yourself. If you are having a hard day, you feel like you might pick up, go do something to get out of yourself, because I guarantee you it will help. With that, thank you for letting me lead. It seems like a great meeting, and I think I'll probably end up coming back.